buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, yeah, live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. It is the Thursday edition, the snow edition. I looked out, dog went outside, looked up at me and said, do I really have to go out? Snow falling, all over, big, fat, 50-cent piece size flakes. You know what a 50-cent piece is, right? I mean, you've been around long enough to know what that is. Kids these days. Anyway, it's a beautiful day here in the neighborhood, and we're getting ready to get cranking on the program for today. We've got lots of stuff to talk about in hour one this morning. We are about to jump into it and talk with school board candidate Tom Bergey, who's going to, or Bergey, we'll ask Tom when he comes on which one it is. He's going to come on board and talk to us about the MATSU school district, where he is currently running as a candidate for the board there. And we'll get his vision for what he sees in the schools, the pros, the cons, the goods, the bads, and what he would plan to do about it. That's all. That's what it's all going to be about here in hour one this morning. And then in hour two, we are going to talk to State Senator Shelley Hughes, who's coming on to also talk with us about the MATSU races and some of the challenges that we're seeing. And she's got, I think she's got some words for some of the behind the scenes stuff is what I'm hearing. So we'll see what Shelley Hughes has to say in hour two this morning as we get ready to crank along for this beautiful Thursday. Tomorrow, of course, is Firearms Friday, where we get a chance to talk about issues of a two-way nature, and we'll be excited about that. I'm working on a guest. I know that Chris Chang is going to be joining us, Top Shot champion from the History Channel, and of course, Willie Waffle will be with us as well. So that's the whole rundown for today and tamale. Okay, well, I think that puts us right where we need to be. It's time to jump into this and get started with our first guest here in hour one. I see that Tom is in the green room. Let's get him on board and get started with him to see what he has to say about what's happening down in the MATSU, in the school board race, and with education as a whole. Let's bring him on right now. Tom Bergey, Tom, I'm not sure which way to pronounce it. You tell me, and we'll get started from there.
Oh, good morning, Michael. It's Bergey.
Bergey. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for coming on board this morning and joining us. First and foremost, as always, a lot of times people don't know, who you are or anything else. So give us a little, the superheroes would call it a Genesis story. Give us a little bit of a background here. Who you are, where you came from. Let's get started there first before we go anywhere else.
So I live in District 1, which is the eastern part of the MATSU district. By profession, I'm a farmer. So I'm one of the vegetable farmers out here. Grew up in Glen Allen. Spent a little bit of time in the Army and then moved into the Valley. Retired from UAA. And now I'm presently farming, plus spent the last 6 years on the school board. All right. That's kind of my life in a nutshell.
Your life in a nutshell. Farming and school board. That sounds exhausting, quite honestly, because I imagine farming is probably the first 12 hours of the day, and then everything else becomes, sucked up by the school board stuff. What made you run in the first place, Tom? I mean, when did you lose your mind and say, boy, this sounds like something I really need to do as a farmer with all the stuff that I need to do? What made you jump in there 6 years ago to become a school board member to begin with?
Well, the state during that time, and still to a point, is, we just had low performance rates nationally. And I just felt that we could do better. And that is, I ran on that platform, and student achievement is near and dear to my heart. And that's kind of my passion, is to push the student achievement in the MATSU, and try to get us up much higher than what we were. And that was my impetus for running.
Well, and I think you have, I think you've probably, the proof is in the pudding. The MATSU has done better, I think, than any other district in the state as far as bringing its scholastic achievement up. And quite honestly, I would applaud you for that, because it seems like in all this discussion, in all the things that are happening around the state regarding school funding and everything else in education, the one thing that seems to slip by the wayside is that many times a lot of these folks do not talk about the actual achievement. They use it as a backhanded thing to say, well, if you want better achievement, then we need more money. But yet when they're asked to be accountable, like I know Mike Shower offered to vote for the BSA increase, but offered some accountability measures as well, then they turn that down. And so it seems like in some ways, this is my opinion, in some ways, the scholastic achievement almost becomes an afterthought to the actual mechanisms of just getting the educational machine running. Am I wrong? Is that how things kind of go? Has that been your experience over the last 6 years?
The proof to your statement is how we function nationally. I mean, whenever we're taking any national assessment, we seem to score towards the bottom in English and math. We're not as low as we were, but we're nowhere where we need to be. Since we've brought in our new superintendent, that's going on about 4 years ago, we're looking at MATSU always was just a hair above the big districts in the state. Now we're starting to have measured progress in the state testing, but more importantly, what we're looking at is our advanced placement scores for our collegiate courses that we're teaching in the school. We were down at the bottom of the pack across the country as far as students taking them, students passing them. Now we're in about the middle of the pack nationwide as far as the number of students who are taking and the number of students who are passing these exams. Our state assessment exam is unique to the state of Alaska, so we can only compare ourselves within the state. But what we're finding is some of the curriculum pieces that we're buying, these companies have assessment tools and they're selling their product nationwide. And one of our assessment tools, we just got a feedback from the company that our growth in the reading aspect is so substantial, they want to showcase the MATSU in their marketing scheme for the nation. And that we are experienced tremendous growth there. And that goes hand in hand with the READS Act that just came out, that we've been fully implementing. So I just see our future out here is bright. We have a long way to go, but we've just made tremendous strides. And we hired a superintendent out of a district that was within the top 10 of the nation. And one of his goals is to take the MATSU to the same level that the district was at that he came from.
Man, okay,
So
well,
we're
that's
optimistic.
and that's good news. So, what do you attribute what do you attribute these swings to? I mean, do we have obviously leadership is good, a new superintendent who has a goal, whose goals are aligned with things like student achievement and putting that at the top of the list. What else, as a school board member, do you attribute that this rise to? Because all we heard, Tom, over the last year from all the school districts and the superintendents and the talking heads and the news media and everybody else was, well, if we just had more money, we could do better. But yet the MATSU is doing better with what it had and is doing more with what it had than almost anybody else. What do you attribute that success to?
Yeah, I would contribute to the success to the fact that we have continuity, we have a dedicated plan, and we're following through. We're not changing our direction yearly. We have highly trained, competent staff, and we have students that are motivated to learn. And those three factors put together is just creating the success that we have.
You say not changing course every year. Are you referring to, I mean, I know there's been some complaints from a lot of people that some school districts are like, they seem like they change their curriculum every year, every 2 years, every 3 years, and it swings things around. And some people have said that is leading to fatigue and burnout among the teachers trying to reformulate a new plan with a new curriculum. Is it a curriculum thing, or is it just we have this is the dedicated goal amongst everybody here that's working together to get the achievement scores up? Walk me through that.
I would lean towards it's the dedicated goal of everybody is in line. This is what student achievement is, the board's focus. Student achievement is the superintendent's focus. It's being pushed down through the principals. The teachers are getting the support as far as coursework and the in-services for the materials that we're bringing in. We are, I want to say, myopically focused in moving in this realm.
We're talking with Tom Bergey, who is the candidate for the MATSU school board for running for re-election. He's been on the board for the last 6 years. Tom, again, the goal of putting the number one goal to be student achievement seems to be an outlier in a lot of what we've talked about. It seems like in the end, like I've been saying, that the news media and the legislature and a lot of other people have all been talking about how doom and gloom it is, that it's the lack of funding, that we've been flat funded. We hear that a lot. We've been flat funded, of course, ignoring all the one-time funding that goes in every year, millions and millions of dollars. What's your commentary on the current funding situation? What did you guys do with your COVID money? And how are you making that work in this time of what people seem like it's the sky is falling? How are you guys making that work?
So the simple answer for the COVID money is we used our COVID funds for what it was meant for. The increased costs that we incurred for keeping our schools open during COVID. And the vast bulk of our COVID funds were utilized for just that purpose. Right now, our cost per graduated student is among one of the lowest in the state. So fiscally, our district is very sound. We've been able to build over the last 5 years 2 brand new schools without having to incur any new public debt. So funding is always a concern because, more money gives you more options, but we've been able to achieve our goals and strive towards our goals with the current state funding in place. Our borough funding is adequate. We are one of the few school districts that's not funded to the tax cap, so we have room to grow there if we need to. So we just monitor what's going on in Juneau. One of the the things that's nice is that we advocate for more funds, because the second part of our academic movement is we're expanding our career and technical education programs right along with our academic, and career and technical education can be very expensive, building those classrooms with simulators and
Right.
additional staff. And
And that's where
so
we have a dearth of students, right? I mean, the technical fields are looking for people to fill those positions, and it's one of the things that seems to have slipped by the wayside over the last 30 years. So that's also a bright spot on the horizon for the MATSU School Board and the MATSU School District. Tom Bergey is our guest candidate for the MATSU School Board. Tom, hold the line for just a second. We're up against the break. We're going to be back with more. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Return with Tom Bergey in just a minute. Don't go anywhere.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, we're in the break right now with Tom Bergey. Tom, when you hear the ding, which sounds like a ringside bell for a boxing match, that means that we're about to rejoin the radio. So, feel free to stop talking about that time, because it means we got about 30 seconds to return to the radio, or finish your thought as we continue to talk through there. Let's go down here and talk a little bit about some of the questions. Some people have started asking questions in the chat room or making comments. Brian asks, curriculum costs. What portion of the budget is assigned to curriculum purchase and maintenance, etc.? Do you happen to have those numbers handy or right off the top of your head? We won't hold you to exact numbers, but ballpark.
I don't have those exact numbers, but we run at about 75% employee costs to other costs within the district. So I would say that, our costs are not that extravagant. We're a large district, so when we go to buy a curriculum, like right now we're looking at some science curriculum, it'll cost us $2 to $3 million to implement a single curriculum, just because we're a 19,000 student school district. So, I would say that a good 5 to 10% of our annual income is dedicated into curriculum costs.
Okay.
But with any school district, our major cost is employee costs.
Sure. Well, with any operation, be it business or government or anything else, it's always 70 to 75, 80% of the costs are wrapped up in the employees, because that is the biggest cost sector for sure. You guys handled COVID a little bit differently, and I do want to talk about that when we get back to the radio, but it is, Chris, I agree with what Chris said. It's good to hear about how you use the COVID money versus other areas. I mean, school districts were warned, don't use this money for reoccurring costs. And yet many districts in the state, including the largest, just seemed to ignore that and went ahead and did it anyway. And then seemed shocked when they came up to some kind of fiscal cliff because they had used the money unwisely. Something that was obviously avoidable because the MATSU did it. I mean, what are your thoughts as to how other districts, what were your thoughts as you watch this kind of occurring?
Well, I really can't speak to what was going on in other districts. I just recall, when COVID first came out, I was the board president at the time, and I just gave simple instructions to the superintendent that we will be open. And that, and the superintendent and the staff prepared as if we were going to. And they worked with the state to come up with protocols and procedures so that we could stay open.
Right. Well, and the MATSU
that required us to get it. Go ahead.
Yeah, you guys were the most open district, I think, in the state. You guys had stayed open longer and had more open hours than any other district in the state, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. According to Senator Sullivan, on our first day of school, we were the largest district west of the Mississippi to be open in the country.
The largest district west of the Mississippi. Well, I mean, it's an achievement, especially when there was a lot of doom and gloom floating around and people were worried about things. And of course, we talk about the educational loss that many areas across the nation suffered because their kids were shut out of schools for months and months, and in some cases more than a year. So definitely a good thing. Quickly here, somebody asked, what district does what's the coverage area of your district?
So MATSU goes to Glacier View area in the northeast. We go as far as Sioux Valley in the northwest, and then move out to Willow, Kinnick area, Butte, and then Wasilla, Palmer.
So it's
Houston.
a big area, and are the districts. Well, I guess I'll ask this question when we come back because we're 10 seconds out. So hold the line. Tom Bergey, our guest. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Please like and share the show this morning. Ring the bell on YouTube and hit subscribe there. Subscribe first, then ring the bell. Let's get back to it. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay, we're continuing now. Tom Bergey is our guest. He is a candidate for the MATSU School Board running for re-election. And we're talking about schools. We were talking about COVID. This sounds like this is a pretty good setup out there in the MATSU. I've continually heard over the last year as we've been talking about, educational funding sucked up all the oxygen in the room in the legislature this last cycle. And we kept hearing about how we didn't care enough because we weren't giving enough money to kids. And yet the MATSU has continued to, to foil those, a lot of those arguments because they have continued to do very, very well with what they had and where they're going. Tom, you attributed a lot of that success to a unified vision, strong leadership, and kind of an all-around goal to increase those student achievement scores. One of the biggest things that I've always said, now I homeschooled all 5 of my kids, so none of my kids ever attended the brick and mortar schools because, I didn't believe they were doing it right where we were at, and I was happy to continue that. But overall, I think it's the parental involvement is a huge component of student success. And many places have said, well, we just can't control that. Obviously, in the MATSU, either people who live in the MATSU are just different, and they just seem to be more involved and care more if this is the case. Or do you guys have some kind of special program? Somebody in the chat room said they offer parents more choices. What are you doing different with parents that is helping that parental engagement with the student parents so that the students can succeed?
One of the things we do is we offer choice. We are a district of choice. We have a lot of charter schools, many high-functioning charter schools. Our homeschool is our largest single building population-wise in the state. We've got, close to 3,000 homeschool students just in our homeschool alone, plus all the students in our traditional brick and mortar schools. We have some of the strongest parental rights board policies in effect in the state. Other districts have bits and pieces, but as far as I know, our package is most inclusive, and it gets larger every day. Every time we find a way to be able to include parents in on the decisions that's going on within the classroom, or with not so much classroom, but dealing with students, we try to give them that option. Again, with a huge district, it's hard to service right down to the individual. We
Tom,
tend to focus that way, and
Tom,
where success lies, and I believe our parents are starting to see that.
Tom, we're breaking up here a little bit. I'm going to ask you here for just a second I'm going to ask you to disconnect. I'm going to remove you and have you reconnect because we're having a little bit of a connection problem there. So I'm going to remove you from that. And Tom's going to jump back on. Tom Bergey is our guest, candidate for the MATSU Borough School District. Again, running from re-election. He's been on the school board now for 6 years. And has been school board president in the past as well. And now we're talking with him about that parental engagement component of it. That seems to be a little better. So, Tom, I'm sorry if you could repeat that. The parental engagement, you're giving them more choices. You're engaging them in when those choices are being made, and you're giving them an opportunity to choose which type of education their kids want.
That is correct. So we strongly believe out here in parental engagement.
Well, yeah, because parental engagement is the key to me, it seems like, because again, you can't just park kids at a school for 5-6 hours a day and then send them home to parents that are not engaged and expect that 5 or 6 hours a day to make the difference. Right? I mean, that's the problem. You've got to have that parental engagement.
Parental engagement is key. But one thing that people forget about parental engagement is that parents also have the right whether to choose to be engaged or not. And we're finding that we have about a third of our parents that are actively engaged in their students. Whenever we bring out, a new program, that involves the parents, we have a high success rate of parents that will sign up, sign in, will want to have that information sent. So we find that very encouraging, and it's just growing. There's a sense of apathy across the country that the schools are not responsive and the schools are not listening, and frankly that mindset is in the valley as well too. But we're finding every year that we're getting more and more parents that are engaging, and I believe that we are eroding that mindset out in the valley, that more parents are believing and are actually becoming engaged in their local schools, and it's showing. And we know our parents are being engaged because we have a very high rate of enrollment and participation in our charter schools. And
Right.
like I said, our homeschool, which is another school of choice, is our largest single building population wise in the district. And then whenever we put in functions, when we register students, if parents wish to be notified about certain information, we're generally getting about 1/3 to 1/2 of parents who are wanting individual notification in specific areas on their students.
Right.
And we're just really optimistic with that. And every year, the number of parents that are opting into these different programs is increasing. So I just have an overall optimistic view, but across the nation, public schools are taking a pretty good black eye, and there's a lot of times when we'll sit in our boardroom and we'll have public testimony and we'll have parents that are angry about something that's happening somewhere else in the country,
Right.
that's
Not
not
here.
happening in our district. And
Right. They should
we're
be.
working hard to go ahead.
No, they should be happy that it's not happening in their district. They may be outraged about someplace else, but they should be lauding you for the fact that it's not happening in the district. That's for sure. You've mentioned choice a couple times here. You've talked about the homeschool, the MATSU Borough homeschool. You've talked about charter schools. My experience in watching this is and seeing it in other areas is that a lot of times those programs are treated almost with an adversarial relationship. Like, we don't want to do new charter schools because maybe they feel like it's taking something away from the main schooling as it normally goes, business as usual or whatever. But it sounds like you guys have embraced this idea of the charter schools and the homeschooling, again, by giving the parents the choice, because those will be the most engaged parents, instead of shunting them or setting them aside and forcing them to send their kids to the regular brick and mortar. They've obviously taken that extra step to either be the kids' teachers themselves, or to, have to sacrifice and give time and be on a board and take care of a charter school. Why has the MATSU embraced that versus what seems to be this adversarial relationship that other districts have?
We've adopted and accepted alternative schooling for decades now. MATSU, our homeschool, has its roots back in the 1970s. Charter schools have existed in the MATSU since the early 90s. So, it's always been a strong desire within the local population to have alternative education opportunities, and we've provided that. And it's only gotten stronger over the years. Two of our strongest academic unit buildings are charter schools. And the community, we're going to see how well our community supports our charter schools, is we are putting a bond issue to build permanent facilities for several of our charter schools. We have charter schools now that are starting to go generational, whereas the parents went to the charter school that their children are now attending. So, and we believe that bond is going to pass. So that will give our charter schools, instead of leased facilities or borrowed facilities, which most charters generally get, this is going to give them a permanent home, which they own. We're adopting a new new charter school is expanding out to go K-12. They're at a K-8 right now, and we're getting ready to build their facility, and that building's getting ready to take on a classical education model, and we've already started hiring the Latin teachers for it. So,
Wow.
and you look at the highest performing buildings in the state, which are private schools. I believe that's Lumen Christi and Holy Rosary in Anchorage. And we're looking at moving into that model, not the Catholic curriculum, but the classical curriculum, which they run.
Yeah, no, that's music to my ears. A classic curriculum is definitely up there, I think, in ways of getting. We talk a lot about the triumvirate of logic, rhetoric, and reason. That's part of the classical education model, and I'm happy to hear that that's what the MATSU is doing. Tom Bergey is our guest. We're coming up against the next break. I do want to talk with him a little bit about his vision rather, for where the school district needs to go and why he wants to go back again to the school board. Obviously, he's been dedicated 6 years on the board so far. We will continue with Tom Bergey here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere, and we will see what he has to say here coming up next. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Back with Tom Bergey right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
All right. Tom Bergey is our guest here on the program, getting things ready to go. Frank says, hey, Tom has walls like I do. He's got walls like I do. I've got some walls in I think there's you can't see the roof of the studio, but it looks a lot like Tom's roof right there, the ceiling in his room. That's what happens when you're a farmer. I got it taped and mudded. What do you want? I don't have time for paint. I ain't got time for paint. That's what happens. That's Alaskan.
There's a reason why banks won't let you move into your home until it's 98% finished.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. I've got better things to do. There's things to do. I got fields to till and ready to go. Tom, this, again, I want to just say how impressed I am overall with the MATSU's performance over the years. Again, and their fiscal discipline and responsibility, because again, they were open, and I hate to keep going back and beating the dead horse of the COVID thing, but I think it was indicative. We could see the districts across the country, the worst examples were like in the LA Unified School District, where they were basically holding the kids hostage and putting out demands for, I don't know, social justice and equity and everything else, instead of focusing on getting the kids back in school. Meanwhile, the MATSU is just cranking right along. You guys did have some COVID cases that popped up at the schools, but it was really kind of ho-hum. There was not a lot of things that happened. A case would pop up, you'd close the school for a couple of days and go to remote learning, and then you'd come back. I mean, that was all part of the plan, right?
Yes, that was part of the plan, and that was developed in partnership with the state. We had developed protocols and operating procedures that had never existed before, and like with anything new that's a trial, there were difficulties. It was a very trying period. But
your internet, Tom, your internet is degrading again, and it's like we go for a little bit and then it goes good. I lost you there for a second. So I'm sorry. Go ahead again. You said you had a plan. It came from the state.
Well, we built it in conjunction with the state, and like all things new, we had a lot of bugs to work out. And by December, after running for the first half of the year, we started seeing other districts in the state starting to open. And that is, we just led the way. Right. And folks thought that it couldn't be done, and we proved that it could.
Yeah, no, exactly. And again, there were, like I said, a handful of COVID cases that I recall shutting down the schools. But again, it wasn't for weeks and weeks and months at a time. It was for a few days. And again, you guys seem to stand up your remotely. You must have had an advantage because you already had a homeschooling component going strong for the ability to move to remote learning so quickly.
Yep. We had planned ahead for that. The earthquake that happened the previous December, we had, for the schools that were affected by that, we had to develop a remote learning plan. We had exercised it. So we had already started the infrastructure for not being in the buildings. So we were moving along that path, and then COVID hit, and that just was the earthquakes again on a massive scale.
Right. You had to accelerate that program and get it rolling. So again, kudos to you guys for getting that done and for, again, having the vision to move forward. Let me touch again here real quickly on the charter schools thing, because again, you seem to be more welcoming and warming to that idea. As you said, your charter schools are some of your bright spots in your academic achievement. They're helping push up the numbers pretty much across the district. So if parents came to you with a new idea for a new charter school, immersion school, something like that, the school board is not an automatic no, right? I mean, you guys look at those, and as long as it's valid, it's something you guys consider, right?
Yes. As long as it is moved through the process and everything is sound, we have no objection to it. We just stood up a new charter school last year. So it's not something that we oppose. We've done charter schools enough that we kind of know what's going to succeed and not succeed. And our staff, when we have a group of parents and faculty that come to us with an idea, we have the ability and the past experience to help them succeed in their endeavors. And sometimes charter schools don't work. So, and we've had a few charter schools that have closed, but by and large, most of our charter schools succeed.
Right. Well, and it's, again, because it's a partnership and it's not adversarial, I think is probably one of the key components to that to make it work. So kudos to you on that. Tom Bergey's our guest. It seems like where you hold the phone matters how it works, Tom. So what you're doing is good right now. Just hold it right there. Don't let it go. Don't move. We're going to be back here. The
Okay.
Michael Duke Show. Common Sense Radio. Let's do it.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
We're continuing now with Tom Bergey, who is a candidate for re-election on the MATSU school board, 6 years already, still working hard, got new ideas. This last segment here of the program, I wanted to talk about future visions. We've talked about, the past. We talked about COVID times. We've talked about the funding issues and everything else. Maybe we can explore a little bit more your career technical side, Tom, of what's going on, and then what your vision is for the future. Why are you running again? Did you not get the work done? Is there still more to do? Give us your thoughts here on this.
Well, I'd say there's still more to do. When we look at our testing results, we're on the climb. So we are starting to hit middle of the pack nationally on some of our academic testing. So I would say we're halfway there to our goal of being on the top. And then we've focused academically to begin with. Right now, we're starting to develop our career and technical education areas. We've discovered that a student who takes 2 or more classes in a concentrator area, 2 or more similar classes in welding or auto shop, their graduation rate sits at about 99%. So we're focusing now on, we've got the academic side up and running and building, and now we're working on building our career and technical education side. And we have some excellent facilities out here in the MATSU, our career tech high school, our new high school that we built out at Houston. Has a career and technical education focus, and we're trying to get our ultimate goal is to get every student who graduates from MATSU, not only will they be prepared to go to college, but they will also have a career and technical education focus, so that they have the ability, when they graduate from our schools, they can go either direction with same amount of success. And we're starting to get partnerships with different companies within the state. Kubota has done a maintenance certification course to get Kubota equipment maintenance certified at Wasilla High School. We're starting to partner with other businesses. One of the things that we're trying to work with the state on is we have to get some legislation changed, because we want to be able to move some of our high schools to a 4-day school week in order to enable apprenticeship programs to occur, throughout the school year, so that our students have all the pieces and components that they need in order to move into a vocation upon graduation without having to do additional steps.
Right. So they can do 1 day a week of apprenticeship or partial days of apprenticeship to be able to fulfill those requirements, so that they can step right out of the high school graduating room into a career.
Yes. And that right now, the way our statutes are, it's going to take some tweaking in the statutes, and we've been talking to the legislature about that, and other districts are starting to come in and wanting to do that as well. So hopefully we will gain some traction there. But there's a lot of work to be done to bring our CTE up to where we want it. And that's where the next hard push is. And like I said earlier, career and technical education is very, very expensive, and it takes a long time to put in place. Instructors are hard to find, and we're looking and we're training, so it's just difficult. It's a heavy lift.
It is a heavy lift. And I think that's been that fundamental shift we're seeing now. I mean, when I went to high school, all anybody ever talked about was, getting into college, get a good education, go to college, get your degree, get a good job, you'll be successful. But we've seen, of course, over the last 35, 40 years, that just getting a degree didn't necessarily translate to getting a good job or getting a good career or even being successful. In fact, it left a lot of people with a lot of debt, a lot of bitterness, and not success. And meanwhile, our career paths, and especially in the blue collar industries and the technical industries, we're starting to be woefully unstaffed. And that is, I think, a shift that is needed to happen for quite some time.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree. And it is, and again, it boils down to choice by focusing on both paths for the students. When they graduate, they are given the choice of what they wish to do. They're not locked into one thing and they have to retrain or reskill to move into some other field. And you know, you hear the argument of, I'm going to be a welder, I'm going to be a mechanic, or I'm going to be a carpenter. Why do I need the other component? Well, as you progress down your career, when you've been in there for 10, 15, 20 years, and then you decide, wow, I wish to move into management for this company. And then you have to have a degree in computers for doing computer aided design, or a business degree to move into the business office, things like that. If somebody hasn't been prepared to move that path, that just becomes a higher hurdle. And
Right.
we're trying to eliminate that. And also too, when you look at the college graduation rates, the vast bulk of students who enter into a 4-year college, good 60-70% don't achieve their degree. So if a student moves into college and they fall into that higher statistic, they need to be able to have something to go to. And
Right.
that's, we're making sure that students have, when they leave the MATSU, that they have choices and they have options, and that they're prepared for both.
Right. Tom Bergey is our guest. Pull that a little closer to you there, Tom. We're breaking up a little bit. As we look at
Okay.
as we look at the coming school year and the coming session, what would be your priorities of the legislature? You were just talking about getting some legislation to change it so that you could have a 4-day school week at the technical schools and things like that. Is there other things that you would like to see as a school board member in those legislative priorities?
Well, we are going to, because we are looking at taking on school bond debt, we're going to be looking to ask the legislature and the governor to consider, reinstating some school bond reimbursement money. We always are advocating for stable education funding, and to move away from the one-time funds. The one-time funds are very, very dangerous in the aspect of, if you hire staff based on one-time money and that money goes away, you get immediately put into a financial dire situation. And so it gives us more flexibility for long-term planning if the money is dedicated and not one time. I mean, it's appreciative, everything that the legislature gives us, and we are hopefully we are spending it wisely in the public's eye. But we're moving into some programs that we are looking for 3, 4, and 5-year stability in the funding model.
So does that equate to a change to the BSA funding, or to the formula, or some other kind of baked in money? What does that look like? Because I mean, the BSA has been fairly flat over the last 5 or 6 years with very little raise, but again, it has had that one-time money, and I understand what you're talking about with long-term planning, but what does it look like to you, this solid increase in money that you can count on year after year? How does that come about in your mind?
So we at the MATSU, when we go to Juneau, we do advocate for a limited BSA increase, and we calculate out what the BSA, for what we're doing, what the BSA needs to be. Fortunately, for the past 5-6 years, the funding, the money that we are asking for a BSA increase, the legislature has always came back in excess of one-time monies that would be larger than the funds that we would get if our BSA requests were being fulfilled. So, we're comfortable at the position that we take. One of the nice things with our asks is now we are partnering with the borough assembly, and our asks are going in jointly. So
Right.
we're advocating as a team out here and not individually. So
And I'm wondering if the current increase, it's the $360 versus what was the one we saw, 1400, 1413, 1460.
yes.
I mean, is there a magic number in there where you guys think that it works? Is the current increase enough? Does it have to be 500? Does it have to be the 1400 from your perspective? What's the answer there?
So while we were advocating last year, we were advocating down in the 300 range. The 1400 is, that would just make our CTE programs explode if we were to get that much money infused into the district. But for us to move at the realistic pace that we are, $150, $200, $300 BSA increase would be at the maximum realm. And I just don't, it'd cripple our state to just infuse a $1,400 BSA increase with all the.
It's $1 billion. If you looked at the 10-year forecast, I mean, that's a lot of money for sure. So it comes down to it. All right, Tom, well, we're down to the last 90 seconds or so. So this is your elevator pitch. Where do folks find out more about you? How do they support you? Where do we go from here?
So my website is thomasbergeyforschoolboard.com. There you can find some information about me. I tend to stay right in my district, and I do mailings and things there. But feel free to pop into the board, and my information's on the board. And if anybody ever feels that they have a question, text me. I'm on a tractor quite frequently, so I don't pick up my phone during the day too often. But if I get a text and I know that you have a question, I'm generally pretty good at following up on it.
Okay.
So,
Tom Bergey for School Board, Bergey, TomBergey4SchoolBoard.com. Tom, thank you so much for coming on board this morning and sharing your thoughts with us, and good luck here in the upcoming election, which will be with the general in the MATSU. So if you want to go check it out, Tom, hold the line for just a second here as we wrap things up. Folks, we got more coming up. State Senator Shelley Hughes will be joining us here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Back with more in hour 2, dead ahead. Tom, just a couple quick questions. Melody asks, because I like what you're doing with the career and tech services. I'll be honest with you. I think that is an important part of stuff. But Melody asks, how is career tech doing in status since they turned it into a lottery school? What's the status since it became a lottery school? Because obviously there's more demand than there is supply on that issue, right?
yes. And some of the things that we've talked about, because there is such demand for our career tech facilities, is we're looking at moving career tech from a single 8-hour period to 2 8-hours, and having an A shift and a B shift. And we're looking at exploring the ability of running that school, instead of 18 hours a day, running it 16 hours a day, with from 8 hours a day to 16, with 2 sets of staff. And we're looking at the possibility of doing that, which would basically double our capacity without us having to build any more infrastructure. So we're exploring those options. There's always been a type of lottery system for career tech, and now that's changed over the last few years. But yes, we have much more demand than we have seats to fill.
Right.
So
One other question that I want to ask is about administrative overhead, because Sarah Montalbano, who was with the Alaska Policy Forum, when we talked to her about this, talked about the administrative costs in school districts around the state and how they've risen. MATSU had one of the lowest coefficients of administrators to teachers, but in many cases it was, 1, 2, sometimes even 3 administrators per teachers. How do you guys prevent the administrative overcreep? Do you feel like that that is a continuing problem that needs to be addressed and squeezed, or what's your thoughts on it?
It is a continuing issue. We are always looking at our costs. We just had an administrator move to another district out of state, and we collectively made the decision to take that position and break it apart and distribute the task, and we didn't backfill. So we're forever looking at what we can do to keep the top of the district as lean as possible.
Right. Well, that is one of the highest cost factors in schools these days is the administrative side. I was shocked when I went to high school. There was 40 teachers in the high school, 35, 40 teachers, and only a dozen administrators, and now it's almost a 1-to-1 in most schools, and it makes me wonder about how much of this money is being sucked up by that overhead. So I know it's a tough thing. All right, Tom, any final thoughts? Anything that we didn't touch on today that you wanted us to get to that we didn't get to, or anything else you want to say before I let you go?
I think we pretty much covered it. My main focus is academic achievement, and that's what we talked about.
Yeah.
So, but there is more going on in the MATSU than just academic achievement, but we can move that at a later date if you like, or.
Well, that 95 to 99% graduation rate is an achievement in and of itself, as you said, when you focus those kids on career tech, because the statewide average is like 76%. So you guys are doing something right.
Right now, our graduation rate is sitting at 87%, but we're seeing the studies across the nation where if students have 2 or more classes in a CTE concentrator, that they're at a 99% graduation rate, and that we're just looking at that going, that's a quick, that's an easy way for us, because we're moving in that direction, to further positively impact our graduation rate.
Right. Well, you guys are doing something right. You are the number 1 district in the state, as far as I can tell from the numbers that I've looked at. And like you said, when the average is 76 and you guys are already at 87, reaching for 99, that's a good course to be charting, as far as I'm concerned.
Yep. One of the things that we're doing out here is we're moving away from the state measures, because we're no longer wanting to compare ourselves to the state. We're moving more towards national measures. How do we measure against the rest of the other 49 states? And that's where our focus is moving on now, because our kids have to compete in a global economy. We're not just competing with the kids in the surrounding area. Our students have to be prepared to deal with the graduates who are coming out of states everywhere.
Yeah, no, exactly.
They got to be at that level.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can no longer afford to just focus myopically in on ourselves.
Yeah, well, especially since the state of Alaska is at the bottom of the bucket overall in academic achievement, we shouldn't be comparing ourselves to ourselves. We should be comparing ourselves to the best that's out there. And that's what we should be doing. All right, Tom.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for coming on board and joining us this morning. I appreciate it. Good luck in your election, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to you again here in the future.
All right. Thank you. Good day.
Thanks so much for coming on board and joining us today. Tom Bergey, candidate for MATSU Borough School Board, here on the program. I mean, that gives me some hope for folks who still have their kids in the brick and mortar school system in the MATSU. Again, more of a focus on CTE, I think, is important, because, as he said, it gives you something to fall back on if you need to. I mean, that's always been the question. You get all this achievement, you want to go to college, but what if you want to do something different? And of course, as a fan of Mike Rowe and watching what he's doing with all of his CTE stuff and his push for getting more people into the trades, I think that is an impressive feat for sure. All right, I see Shelley Hughes has joined us in the green room, and we're going to jump in with her here in just a minute. We're about 30 seconds out. Let's continue. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return with more right after this. Don't go anywhere.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
Sounds just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Yep, my friends, live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com. You'll find links to the social media sites, YouTube, Facebook, Rumble, where we broadcast live every morning, as well as the audio-only live stream and the podcasts as well, plus live around the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. That's what we do here each and every day on the Michael Duke Show. Talk about Alaskan issues and more. We just finished up with Tom Bergey, who's a candidate for the MATSU Borough School Board. Good conversation with him. I'm pleasantly surprised at the direction that the MATSU Borough School District is going. Again, still a big fan of homeschooling, but sounds like they've got things moving in the right direction there. Hopefully they can continue that as we move forward. But let's move into hour two. Today, we're talking with State Senator Shelley Hughes. She's going to join us here in just a second. We're going to be talking about the MATSU races. There's a lot of stuff that's kind of up in the air and a lot of pivotal races that could make some changes in the makeup of both the Senate majority and the House majority, which could lead to how things are done in the state here over the next few years. And there's been some contention going on there as well about how things are being done and people working together and whatnot. And Shelley has some thoughts on that this morning. So we're going to jump over to her right now and bring her on the program to discuss and see what she has to say. State Senator Shelley Hughes joins us right now. Good morning, Shelley. How are you this morning?
Hey, good morning. It's good to be back with you. It's been a while, Michael. I'm not sure, but I think it's a good time to have a conversation. A lot at stake.
No, I agree. I think there is a lot at stake. I mean, we've seen what's been going on in the legislature, the tete-a-tete back and forth, the majorities and people wanting certain things and all the oxygen getting sucked up by certain things in the room. And then the fact that, we're struggling to try and hold back the tide of more government spending instead of making it more efficient and making it, smaller, more limited, yet efficient government, still providing us with the services that we need. And I think that's an ongoing struggle. So I know you want to talk today about the MATSU and the races and the districts and how that can affect, again, the majorities in both the House and the Senate. And so let's talk a little bit here. Let's get started and kind of give me your thoughts on what's happening out there and what people really need to know, because I think there is some gamesmanship or showmanship going on in some of these areas, and people kind of need to know what's happening truthfully within their district.
Absolutely. And I'm going to just put a very quick plug, because you had our former school president, Tom Bergey, on. I'm very proud of our school district and the work that they've done. But I also want to remind voters, many of us were aware, you were too, Michael, probably around the time of April and May, when Judge Adolph Zeman ruled the homeschool program unconstitutional. I just want to remind people, a large part of the district, not every community, not up in Fairbanks, but on the Kenai, South Central, He will be on our ballots, and I recommend a no vote. And I don't do that lightly. I actually went onto the Alaska Judicial Council's site and looked at the standards for a judge, and he fails them. He is supposed to rule with precision. He did not use a scalpel. He used an axe, and he ruled that essentially would have shut down the homeschool program had the Alaska Supreme Court not overturned his decision. But the other thing is he's supposed to be knowledgeable, demonstrate knowledge about the law. He did not realize, apparently, or he was ignoring the fact that there are state funds going left and right to many private educational institutions directly through appropriations in our budget every year. For instance, to Alaska Performance Scholarship Program, to Head Start, directly to some vocational education training institutes. Even there are school districts that supplement their high school choice offerings through BYU, which is a private educational system. So he didn't seem to understand what was in our annual budget, which is a law every year. He also didn't seem to understand the framers' intent with the constitutional amendment, because if you read the constitutional amendments carefully, you'll find that the discussion and the debate, they determined they did not want state funds to go to physical assets of a building, of putting on a new roof or maintaining electricity and heat so the pipes wouldn't freeze. They didn't want their money to go to that. But if it benefited the student, they actually discussed that. They were okay with a lunch program at a private school or busing kids to a private school. And actually, shortly before the vote, out of Homer, Delegate Yule Kilcher asked the question, because he had, I can't remember, it was 5 children or 7 children going to private school, or some of them going to private school, something called the Calvert program, but he referred to it as private school. And he made the point that the territorial government was paying for that. Would that go away if the amendment were adopted? And it was Jack Coghill who told him, no, you had that under the territorial governor. You just get approval from the education commissioner, and that would continue after we became a state. So he didn't know the Constitution, really the background behind it. He didn't know the laws that we currently are passing, and he also didn't rule with precision. So I highly recommend a no vote on Judge Adolph Zeman. I'm sorry I stuck that in, but I wanted to stick that in because it does affect Kenai, Anchorage, and Matsu, and it ties in with Tom Bergey's conversation.
Oh, absolutely. And as a homeschooling parent who worked with the IDEA program, I mean, that's part of the whole issue as well, because they use a lot of private vendors for different things that they do. And it would have gutted that. My kids were all out last year. But it would have gutted all of those programs. And obviously threw 25,000 students into turmoil as to whether or not they would be able to continue. So I would not say no to that suggestion. All right, Shelley, let's move over into the election cycle and the MATSU. Lots of things happening. And I know that there has been some contention. We touched on it a little bit yesterday with State Senator Shower when we talked about the different balances of power between the Senate and the House and where the majorities are going. But you have some specifics that you want to talk about here in the MATSU. And so I wanted to give you the opportunity to, talk about it and to, I guess, educate people on some of the things that are really happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, I'm going to get more specific, and it's a tough conversation to have, Michael. And I know you have a lot of listeners up in Fairbanks and Kenai and in other parts of the state, and we've been talking a lot about MATSU. And so that through Facebook and through people in other regions that know people, if they could help get this message out, because I want to point back a few years ago. Do you remember when Roger Holland beat Senator Kathy Giessel? A lot of people don't realize how that occurred. It occurred because it got onto the talk radio shows that her postcards that she was sending to her mailers maybe said something very similar to what Senator Shower or what I would say, or another Republican, but it was what she was doing that was problematic. And when it got uncovered that she was treating her Republican colleagues very poorly, and she lost that race. Now, she did come back with lots of union support, kind of changed her affiliation a bit, But it was through venues like this that the word got out to our voters that, oh, wow, she's doing that? Really? And they chose Roger Holland. So I would like to talk about a race today of someone that I'm guessing some of your listeners are fans of, and you've talked about it a bit. But I think it's important that people know what is really, really going on. And it's because I wouldn't bring it up probably, except right now it's risen to become a pivotal race. And that is the race between David Eastman and Jubilee Underwood. We've got some very tight races. We have, even in Stanley Wright is working very hard. That's essentially a blue district. We have David Nelson trying to come back, but we've got a lot of races that are so close. We don't know if we're going to take that seat. So it is imperative that that seat in Wasilla, that's District 27, be a solid seat of someone who would help form a Republican majority. And that's what we need. And unfortunately, the incumbent, which is David Eastman, has not proven to do that over his 8-year tenure. And that is why I'm coming on. And I want to start out by saying I agree with most of what David Eastman says, very, very many things. And I think that he is very smart, Michael. I think his gift, his set of job skills, though, his gifts and strengths do not fit this particular job. I actually think the guy should go to law school. He's very good as far as getting very particular into the weeds about the wording and about the rules and the Constitution. I think he would make a fabulous attorney. I encourage him to go to law school. He could be our Scott Kendall on the right. So I don't want to disparage him as a person, but he doesn't have the set of job skills that that district needs and that our state frankly needs. Because if we are so close, we could lose that. The Democrats could take control of the House. And I tell you, they saved us this last 2 years. Really, the House did. It was a very thin margin. And sometimes the votes didn't go the way we wanted with different individuals. But just imagine had it been controlled by Democrats, it would have been far, far worse because our Senate was left of center. So I decided last week it was time to step up. I don't get into Republican on Republican races, but this time I think I feel like the voters are smart people, Michael, in District 27. And they hear a headline, they receive a mailer, they see a sign, and they don't really know what's going on. So I am asking your listeners, whether they live in MATSU or another part of the state, or if they're watching on Facebook, if they help get the word out about what is really going on with Mr. Eastman. Like I say, this isn't against him as a person. It's just he's not a good fit for the seat. And I'm going to go, I can give details and be very specific, but Senator Shower and I, and others, Jamie Allard has stepped up and is supporting Jubilee. There are so many conservatives supporting Jubilee right now that are very politically attuned but a lot of people, they are so busy that they're not, they're getting kids off to school, packing lunches, getting to work, that kind of stuff. And they don't maybe see this show or other radio shows. So we're really counting on the politically savvy that pay attention to your show and other radio shows to get the word out to District 27 voters that Jubilee Underwood, who has a proven track record as school board president, she's proven she can work well with others. She's proven she has the skill set that would serve District 27 well.
Well, I think we need to get down into the weeds, obviously, to make assertions like that and then to not would be would be a crime. So, let's talk specifically about it, because I know, again, there's a lot of his supporters out there. And I agree with you. I probably agree with about 80% of what David believes. I just disagree a lot of the times with the way he tries to go about doing it. But he has his supporters, which is their right. And they, if they want to vote him back in, that's their choice, 100% for sure. But again, you have to have all the facts in front of you as what's going on. Like, first thing I see here is that, he's always voted for the PFD. He's voted for full PFD 100% of the time. But we know That's not true. You had the committee bill that came through that had the full PFD in it, and he voted against it. That was because, and he offered a variety of reasons why. It's changed over the course of time. But so, again, the full truth is not always out there, or people are not necessarily paying down into the nitty gritty. So, yeah, I think we need to get into details.
Okay, we can do that. We can do that. That
And
particular.
and I just looked at the clock, so let's do that here on the other side, because
Okay, sounds good.
I'm a slave to the clock here. So we're going to go over here and take a look at this, and we'll continue. State Senator Shelley Hughes is our guest. We're going to return in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. We'll be back with more here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Again, Harold showing his ignorance here. It was a DOA bill to begin with, he says. No, it wasn't. It was a concurrence bill. All they needed to do was concur. That's part of the problem here is I hate to use the word misinformation, but it's out there. And Shelley, I'm sure we'll go through all this as we go through this.
Hey,
But go
Michael,
ahead.
just quick logistics here. Are we going to 7:30 or 8?
8 was my plan. So
Okay, that's fine. That just helps me pace and know, otherwise I was going to really have to prioritize and just pick out a few things.
No, we go to 8. This is long form. I don't do short form unless I absolutely have to, because we never get to everything that I want to get to. So it's
and especially since you rarely have me, you have to have me on
Yeah.
for a while, right?
well, I have asked you, and sometimes you're just too busy. That's what
I'm not as feisty as Mike Shower. I probably don't get your listeners going quite to the same extent that he does. But
no, you're always welcome on the program. Don't worry about that. I mean, it's sometimes I feel like it's not just you. I mean, I'll send out some emails or some text messages and say, hello, anybody want to, and it's crickets, because I know you guys are busy, but
yeah, it's funny. Mike Shower he's the fighter, of course. He's got that kind of presence, and he calls me the nice one. I said, don't use the word nice, use the word diplomatic. I'm the diplomatic one, but I am a fighter and I am persistent. It's just, it comes across a little bit, differently, but I'm taking up the banner on this one, and there will be no love lost as far as the Eastman supporters, because they have been, for some reason, they don't go after Senator Shower. Maybe he has a more intimidating way about him, but they've been on my case for quite a bit, and I don't respond well to bullying. That whole FACL method, you're familiar with that, right, Michael? FACL,
right.
Foundation for Applied Conservative Leadership. There is Saul Alinsky Rules for Radicals, except it's been converted by a very extreme contingent on the right to use it against other conservatives. And their motto is something like, if you want to be respected, you have to be feared. And they laugh at the tactic of having a conversation like you and I are having. Instead of trying to persuade or convince or have a reasonable conversation, the tactic is threaten. And so there's a lot of hammering and bullying. And I've been the recipient of that, probably because I don't appear quite like Mike Shower, and I'm done with it. And for anybody that's subscribes to the FACL technique, I would tell you, I will respect you if you want to have a reasonable conversation like Michael and I are having today. But if you're going to try to bully me, I don't respect it. So I think that the whole foundational principle of that FACL stuff is really, really wrong. It doesn't work with Mike Shower. It doesn't work with Kevin McCabe. It doesn't work with me. In fact, I don't know any Republicans that it's worked with. It hasn't worked with Sarah Vance. It hasn't worked with Ben Carpenter.
No, because again, a lot of us have had to deal with bullies in our lives, and we understand how that is. And unless you're willing to have a good reasoned conversation about something, it definitely becomes, it's nothing more than peacocking, right? Out there strutting around, beating your chest, being intimidating. And that's, we've got to be able to have conversations about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and part of it is that they may have a view that's different than what you're hearing from your district, but then they get all riled up because they feel like you haven't listened to them. And, oh, she's not listening to her constituents. Well, actually, I heard from 2 of you on this particular, 3 of you on this particular item, but from the rest of my district, I was hearing from something very, very different. So that's part of the tactic too. They want to make you think they're your most important constituents, I guess.
Right, exactly. All right. Well, Shelley Hughes is our guest. We're about to dive into the deep end of the pool here and figure out what the actual truth is of what's going on and how we can make sure that the legislature again is set up and focused to bring strong, smaller, more limited, stronger services with a smaller, more limited footprint. And we're going to continue this here in just a second. The Michael Duke Show continues with State Senator Shelley Hughes. Please, if you haven't shared the show yet, please share the show. You could share it from any platform you're watching. You can also subscribe, follow, ring the bell on YouTube. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
All right, we're continuing now. State Senator Shelley Hughes is our guest for the hour. We were talking before the break about some of the contentiousness that's going on in the Valley with State Representative David Eastman and some of the things that have been put out there that may not necessarily be truth. And Shelley offered to bring forward proof and to talk about it and say this is, one of the reasons why he's a good person, but not necessarily the right fit to work in the legislature for what's going on. So, Shelley, let's get started. I said we're going to get down into the weeds here. You said you wanted to offer some stuff, and I think after that kind of comment or that kind of statement, that we definitely need to look at the details of why you think the way you're thinking right now.
Yes, and I'm happy to do that. I shouldn't say I'm happy to do it. I don't like to have to point out what's wrong and what's going on with someone. If you've ever hired an employee and had to fire them, it is a tough thing. But what we're in the middle of is a big job interview, right? Who's best suited for the position of District 20 Chair, House Representative. And before I get in the weeds, I want to mention that Jubilee meets the criteria. So as I talk about the different things where I'm concerned that Representative Eastman doesn't have the certain skill sets, Jubilee has them and she's proven them. She works well with others. She's very conservative, and she has successfully gotten the ball across into the goal. So we can rest assured that if we replace Representative Eastman with Jubilee Underwood, the district will be well representative. She will stick with the Republicans. She will not be divisive. She will not undermine her other conservative colleagues. So talking about the PFD though, isn't that what you want to talk about first, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, that's always the first thing they go is, oh, he's a PFD warrior. He's always voted 100% for 100% PFD, and that's where it should go. We heard that first thing in the chat room. So as soon as you started talking about it, that was the first comment. 100%, always a full PFD.
Yes, and as I've been exposing the truth to the voters, he's been coming back on and denying that he hasn't fully supported the PFD. But the truth of the matter is, in 2022, we had a fluke, I guess you'd say, in the Senate. Senator Natasha Ivanimov was absent that day, and we had the votes to pass the full PFD, a vote of 10 of 9. It was the budget, and it could have been the final budget. It was going over the House for a concurrence vote. And a yes vote would have meant that we were done with our work, we would have gavelled out, and everyone would have gotten a full PFD. David Eastman voted against that, and he gives a reason that the budget was bloated, and he was doing it because the budget was too high. Although in recent days, he's kind of acted like he's always supported the PFD. In fact, there's a group and there's some faculty people involved that you've talked about before on the show it's the Save the PFD group, and they don't list his name on their signs that they're holding out on the road. And his name should be on there. Actually, out of the 8 years since Walker cut the PFD and we have fought to try to get it back, that was the 1 year out of 8 years. That was the only year we could have had a full PFD, and he was a no vote. And he knew at that time, any legislator serving would know, when the concurrence vote fails, the next step is a conference committee. Everyone who serves as a legislator knows that the finance chairs in the House and the Senate are on that conference committee, and then a minority member from each finance table is on there that the presiding officer appoints. So he knew just by the makeup of who would be on the conference committee, that PFD would be cut. So he knew very well when he was voting for that budget that the PFD would get slashed, and that is exactly what happened. And also, it extended the legislative session. And Michael, you might remember, but every day the legislative session is extended. I mean, we're talking about millions of dollars here that it costs the taxpayers because we didn't gavel out and concur. The House didn't concur on that budget. So not only did he cut the PFD for Alaskans, but he also cost the state more by extending the legislative session. And I'll throw in, as far as spending money, Representative Eastman has filed hundreds of bills in his 8 years. Not one has passed. I don't even think one has ever gotten out of a committee, let alone through a body and passed through both bodies. So hundreds, I'm not going to say hundreds of bills, dozens of bills, and then hundreds of amendments. So between the two, lots of legislative legal work. We hire attorneys to draft these bills and amendments. And so you can look at each bill and amendment. I don't have the figure, but I can tell you that it would be hundreds of thousands of dollars that have been spent to draft everything. Now, his amendments have been heard on the floor. So, and he may have had one or two pass. I don't know, maybe 5, I don't know. But over the course of his 8 years, never a bill, and a tiny, if at all, fraction of amendments to a great cost to the state. So just from a cost perspective, as far as PFDs not going into our pockets, and for taxpayer dollars, for extra days in the Senate and hundreds of bills and amendments, I would say that's a problem, Michael.
Yeah, no, he had something like 176 bills over 8 years, I think is the number that I saw that have not passed. Now, that's not necessarily, in one way, to me, that's not necessarily bad. I don't want to see 176 new laws passed, but at the same time, it shows, the effectiveness, and you've got to work together as a team to be able to make a lot of these things work, and that is part of the problem. The teamwork aspect is not there. You can't, as much as, people would respect you for being the lone wolf and doing your thing and trying to, but if you're not getting anything done, how effective as a legislator and as a representative for your district are you at that point?
Yeah, you can talk the talk, but you've got to walk the walk. And I think that's where the message getting out to District 7 is important, because they're aware of his talk. The rhetoric sounds pretty good. It's the walk and what is actually happening. And I will say, I'm guessing there were actually some good bills in that 176, because he's a limited government guy. And so bills don't always create more government. Sometimes they pare it back. So, but you have to have relationships. You have to be considered trustworthy, and you cannot throw your fellow colleagues that would vote for your bill under the bus. And, I know he was recently asked, how can you give an example of how you've worked well with others? And his example actually rather ironic. So get this, he did not sign on to an amendment that Tammy Wilson had, because if he put his name on it, there's sometimes up in the right side of the bill, legislators can sign their name. And that way, when it shows up on the desk of all the legislators, they can see, oh, look, these 9 people or these 11 people are supporting it, which in the Senate, that would mean it passes. But so sometimes you'll get names out. He chose not to sign on to Tammy Wilson's bill or amendment, excuse me, because he thought it was a good one and he wanted it to pass. And he thought if you put his name on there, it might cause it to fail. Isn't that a strange way to say you work well with others? Because your name would be damaging to the amendment. So right there, that's a signal something's wrong. But he supported the amendment and wanted to get through. The other thing that's really odd about that example that he gave recently is, how long has Tammy Wilson been out, Michael? Has it been about 6 years?
I think it's been 4 years. Yeah. So
4 years?
Yeah.
So
Since
she's been out for a while. And if that's the example that you give, that to me is rather odd. And you know what? I don't buy the victim card that's being played either, because I've been out of the majority. Senator Shower's been out of the majority. So is Senator Rob Myers. That doesn't stop us from getting things done.
Well, and I'd like to point out that you guys are not in the majority, not by your own choice. David Eastman has chosen to be a majority or a minority of one. I mean, on his own choosing. He has chosen that. Somebody said, well, because they were saying, well, like you three in the Senate are also off in the corner. Well, but that wasn't your choice. You would be in the majority if they could organize a majority around Republican lines. He has chosen not to participate in it. And then this is something that I've said about David in the past. Again, I'm sure he's a great person. I agree with most of what he believes. I just don't like the way that he does it. This is one of the things that I don't like. He stands apart and then says, look at me, I'm taking the slings and arrows of all these people and I'm doing it for you. It's a martyrdom thing where he can stand in the gap and say, I'm doing the right thing and everybody hates me for it. Well, I don't think everybody hates you because you're doing the right thing. It's because you're not playing well with others to try and come together. There has to be some compromise in some of these things, or some working together with this. And that's been part of the problem in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that's one of the job skills you have to be able to work with others. And, a lot of people get tripped up, especially conservatives, over the word compromise. I don't like the word compromise. I'm not going to compromise my values, but you can build on points of consensus. And that PFD vote was one of them. I would love to reduce a lot more spending in that particular bill. But when Mike Shower and did a different one, saw that full PFD getting out to the people, that was a point of consensus. And so we move forward on it. I think with Representative Eastman, he's what you might call a purist. It's a very virtuous kind of thing. I'm going to be the most conservative person in the room, or maybe in the state or the world. I don't know. But that doesn't work. Our constitutional republic was set up knowing there would be people of different views coming to the table, and you have to be able to get things done. And you're right. We didn't choose not to be in the majority. We actually put forward a proposal and had a decent proposal, and it was not picked up on. So we were working very hard to try to bring forward a Republican majority. Representative Eastman, on the other hand, has really sabotaged that effort. And there's the incident, I don't remember if it was 4 years ago or 6 years ago, where the House members, the Republicans, met after the election, and they had 21 people, and they, had a meeting and said they were going to form a majority. And David was in the room, and the press was waiting, and they came out to announce they had not decided on speakers and chairmanships, but they were going to be a majority, right? And they come out to the press, and everybody was supposed to be standing there, and lo and behold, there were only 20 people there. David did not show that he was committed and reliable to be with them, and that is how then, I don't remember if it was Bryce or Louise that year, became the speaker. So I really do put it at his feet that out of 8 years, the Democrats controlled the House for 6 of those. And it very much falls at David's feet because he was not willing to work to form a Republican majority. And we know Jubilee would. She has stated that, and her track record shows that she would do that.
Right. Well, I mean, and that was the vote too. The vote for the speaker for when Tallarico was going to be speaker, and there was a lot of going back and forth, and everybody thought it was a done deal. And then he said in the caucus that he was going to vote for him, and then when it came down to it, he said no. And again, then the majority passed over to the Democrats. They were able to forge a coalition. again, it's the problematic thing. I have no problem with people standing on their principles, but you also have to, again, like you said, find those points of consensus, and you've got to get work done. And you can't get work. You can't. The most work gets done when you're in the majority, not in the minority. That's when you can control the narrative and you can drive the boat, so to speak.
And I want to say, even Michael, when you're in the minority, we still have good relationships with people. So I've been in the minority, and you know what I did? I went to the state school board and through regs worked with the commissioner and the state school board members to protect girls' sports and keep the guys out of the bathrooms, right? So, I'm working now on pulling back restrictive, overbearing kind of things having to do with farming, because our ag industry is at the bottom of the barrel. The only way it can go up. So we reduce taxes on ag lands and on structures, and we reduce the restrictive regulations for a startup that's doing food processing. So, and I worked with Democrats on that, and I am in the minority. And you know what? The Senate president made me chair of that task force. So I'm in the minority, but I still have relationships, and you have to be respected and have relationships in order to get things done. So in the minority, and we worked well with members in the House. Senator Shower was working on many things with House members, and Rob was too, and I was. And, so you have, even when you're in the minority, you cannot use that as an excuse. Yes, your main job is to point out the faulty policy that the majority has, and provide an alternative, better option. But it doesn't mean you don't get anything done. And I'm sorry, but Representative Eastman has not achieved anything that I can think of in 8 years. And I know that if Jubilee Underwood were to be elected for district, it becomes aware of this situation. And I believe the Wasilla voters, if they get this information, Michael, they will choose to send Jubilee. And again, I hope your listeners will help get that word out. We're not sure what's going to happen in the Senate. We've got some hope about maybe things moving to the right, but it's all going to come down in November, and we'll see how that goes.
State Senator Shelley Hughes is our guest. We're going to continue here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show, because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
All right. We're in the break right now. Shelley Hughes is our guest. Shelley, what I hear from a lot of people, and even somebody here in the somebody here in the chat room said it a minute ago, and I don't know which one. I'm not going to go back and look for it, but basically said, but his constituents keep electing him. That's what they want, kind of thing. That kind of action. And so, I mean, you're right. I mean, because you guys share constituencies. So what is that what the constituencies want? Or is there something? Are we missing something?
I think the voters are missing information that's not going to get out. So if you look at some of the other races, you have independent expenditures, PACs essentially, pointing out why somebody shouldn't be in. But in this race, we don't have that. Jubilee is running a positive campaign, letting people know how she would be different and what she would do. But there isn't really a voice out there pointing out what the problem is with the incumbent. And that's when I realized how razor thin our majority was going to be. I thought, when you look at the state, Michael, and you would think Wasilla, the district in Wasilla, Alaska, would be the absolute last district that you'd have to worry about having someone reliable to form a conservative majority. You just wouldn't think it'd be Wasilla. You'd think it'd be somewhere in Anchorage or somewhere. But we actually know that if Representative Eastman, his track record has shown he cannot be counted on to form a majority with the other conservatives. And I think if his district realizes that, and how pivotal that, it's not just pivotal to Wasilla or even MATSU, it's pivotal to the entire state. If we are able successfully to move the Senate to the right, and we're not sure exactly what's going to happen, wouldn't it be a shame that Wasilla sending Representative Eastman could cause something like a common sense parental rights bill to get through because he couldn't be counted on, because he would be too picky about the wording and it wouldn't be perfect, so he wouldn't vote for it. I mean, that's what we've seen, Michael. And there's one other thing, because I'm looking at the clock. I cannot believe. Well, you probably want to wait. Are we back on the air? Are we?
Nope, we're still in the break. It's the fastest 2 hours in radio every time.
It's
yeah,
crazy, because we probably want to talk about Representative Eastman recruiting people to run against conservatives before we close out.
We can do that. We could start the next segment with that. We're 3 minutes out from that,
Okay.
and Frank says, are you stating that the voters in the district are uneducated voters? I don't think that's what she's saying. I'm saying
they're busy voters, and the word hasn't gotten out. So they've been educated, Frank, on what they've heard, but this is information that has not really gotten out. And I because I care about the state and the direction it's going to go, I decided I'm going to get it out. I'm also done with the bullying from his followers, his unusually devout followers who see him as a saint that he can do no wrong. The Save the PFD people are not putting his name, for instance, on their signs when they should be. So they overlook things, and I'm done with it. And people need to know what is going on. His followers have been very vicious. They've called me baby killer. They have called, and I'm pro-life. They have they've made very anti-Semitic comments against me. I have asked David, and others have asked David, to denounce that. He has refused to distance himself from that kind of behavior and talk. But yeah, so it's time for Jubilee Underwood.
No, I mean, I agree with that. But Kyle's comment is kind of indicative of some of the commentary from some of his followers. Eastman is an individual who doesn't do what Showers and Hughes tell him. His consent. I never heard either you or Mike say, we told him to do something and he didn't do it, or anything else. It's just that he doesn't want to work with anybody. He wants to do it his way or the highway. And if you're in a group of 40 people, that doesn't work.
Yeah, it's almost strange. You know how we talk about the woke people virtue signaling? I'm more woke than you. It's the same thing, but it's on the other side. I'm more conservative. I'm more virtuous. I'm more pure. It's virtuous signaling on the right, and it doesn't get the job done as far as I'm concerned. I shouldn't be out there trying to make my fellow Republicans look bad, right? Not that they always vote the way I want them to be. They might say something that I don't want them to say, and I'll probably be called a hypocrite because now I'm pointing that out with Representative Eastman. And if it weren't so pivotal to the conservatives keep having the majority, I probably wouldn't have spoken up. Although I feel bad for the voters in District 27 because I think this information has been kept from them, and I think that it is time that they know. And like I said, we don't have a pact to get it out, so it's got to be word of mouth, Michael.
Yeah. Well, we'll get it. I mean, I think if people had more information, I think it would be better. I too have been on the receiving end. Anytime I make any kind of slight critical comment about David Eastman, I get emails and things like that. And it they are some of the more strident people out there. Let's just put it that way. Strident is the word that I'll use. All right. Shelley Hughes is our guest. We're going to continue the Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. We continue right now. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
All right, we're continuing with Shelley Hughes this morning, state senator, and we're talking about the race in District 27, which is David Eastman versus Jubilee Underwood, and how this is a pivotal race. And Shelley is wanting to get information out there because it doesn't seem like there's a lot of times we're getting the full dope on everything that's happening. Shelley, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that Eastman has not only been trying to, do things on his own and has sabotaged some things that the majority has been trying to push through that would have helped Alaskans, but also he's been actively out there recruiting opponents for other Republicans in his district and in his race. Give us the deal here.
Yeah. And I will talk about that. Another really quick point is a former leader of the MATSU Democrat Party is actively stating voters should vote for David Eastman and not Jubilee, because Jubilee was effective getting things done in the school board. So that should be a real red flag. If the Democrats are supporting Eastman, you have a problem. And if you watched on Gavel to Gavel, you saw he often voted with Democrats for different reasons. Granted that, but yeah, so the Democrats are rooting for David Eastman. That's a problem. Yeah, David he actually was kind of advertising, had a website where people, I don't know if it was a standalone website, but a way that a person could apply or get in touch with him about stepping up and running. And we have proof, we have documentation, including text, screenshots of text from David to a candidate that he recruited someone to run against me. At the time, he also had recruited someone to run against Delana Johnson. That person withdrew before the deadline. His name was Alex Feta. The fellow he recruited to run against me, his name was Gavin Christensen. Gavin, I believe, was undeclared at the time, and he ended up becoming a libertarian, but he was an odd libertarian in that he was promoting that decriminalization of drugs, and then he would be fine with them being sold next door to an elementary school. He also was very supportive of Black Lives Matter. He wanted to defund the police. So he took some extreme positions like that. And when that happened into the summer of that election season, David Eastman started distancing himself. But here's the documentation was exchanges with a realtor, a real estate agent in the Wasilla area named Matt Steele. Matt had been I think he may still be a flight instructor, but this fellow Gavin took a couple of flight lessons from him. He never completed his lessons, but the two fellows would talk politics because Matt's very interested in politics, very conservative, and they chat about politics. And so when Gavin saw this opportunity to step up through whatever Rep Eastman was putting out, and he applied, and then David Eastman got in touch with him, and they had text conversations back and forth. This Gavin was pretty tickled that, some of that important has contacted me. I'm in touch with him. And he went back to his friend and flight instructor, Matt Steele. Well, he considered him a friend at the time anyway, and shared the screenshots to prove and said, David Eastman's been in touch with me. He's suggesting I run for this or this. And there's this other guy, and here we go. And I'm running against Shelley Hughes. And Matt, who is a good conservative, was very questioning David Eastman even early at that time. He could see he was ineffective. And he also supported me. And he told Gavin, not a good idea, shouldn't do it. But Gavin did it anyway. Now, here's the real bombshell, I think, is a few months into the campaign and Gavin taking crazy positions. He was back and forth whether he was really going to run, but he never withdrew his name. And then he got in a high-speed car chase. And he was pretty angry at the person he was chasing. He called 911 and said, I'm going to shoot this person, and kept dispatch on the line and proceeded to shoot and kill that person. And he's since been convicted of murder and is serving time in prison.
Right.
So, yeah.
And I've seen these screenshots of these text messages, and it's pretty obvious that David's trying to build up and to vote out the people who he thinks are his adversaries, I guess, enemies, or people that he doesn't, is not going to work the way he wants them to work. He was obviously pointing these people towards the seats in the legislature in both the House and the Senate. And that's not is this the guy that you want that's going to be trying to recruit other people to run again? I'm not against people. Like I said, I always think everybody should have an opponent. But at some point, if you're actively recruiting to get people out there who have been proven effective, who've done a good job, and I think both you and Shower have done a good job. I haven't agreed with everything you've done, but I think you've both done a good job. Then, this active recruiting of getting people in there to get you out, that's kind of the for me is like the last straw.
So I want to say two things. First of all, David is denying that he was involved with this. The Gavin told me that David had recruited him. He made videos saying that he was working with David, that David had recruited them. When he committed the murder, that Facebook page was taken down, of course, but a lot of people saw those videos. He told Matt specifically. So we have testimony definitely that occurred. David's denying that. And now I'm being accused of having handpicked Jubilee Underwood, and that's not true. I've known Jubilee for a long time. I've known Alexi Moore too, and they're good, strong conservatives. And I did not recruit her. I will admit I was elated when I heard she had decided to run, because I thought she had the potential, actually, if we could get the word out, that she could win. And so that's what we're trying to do now. Wasilla District 27 deserves a good representative, and they will get it through Jubilee Underwood.
All right, Shelley Hughes, last 2 minutes here before we wind up the clock here. So final thoughts on this whole thing. I mean, I know this is unusual. Normally we're not naming names and talking specifics, but at this point, some of this information, and I'm glad the information has come out, because like I said, I agree with him, but I disagree with the tactics, and that's what we're dealing with now, is the tactics of what's going on. So final thoughts here on this.
Yeah, if we want to make sure that the House doesn't shift to the left, I believe District 27 is a pivotal race. And I encourage David Eastman to consider going to law school and being our Scott Kendall on the right. But he's not suited for this particular type of job, and he's costing the state a lot of money. He caused a full PFD to fail. There's a number of other bills that he's voted on. There was one that would have reduced taxes for businesses that donate to educational institutions. He voted against that.
The concierge care. He voted against the concierge care, the healthcare, which would have given us more health options and more affordable options, and he voted against it.
He voted against Sarah Vance's bill in support of Israel. He had some really strange votes. And I think it probably goes back to the purist thing, that there's one little phrase or something in there that was problematic to him. But you got to be able to build points of consensus and get things done. You got to be able to not just get good things done for the state, but halt bad things. And we can't even count on him for that, because he was voting with Democrats. So I just urge voters to spread, wherever you are from, if you know somebody from Wasilla, give them a call, send them a text, send them a message, get on Facebook, support Jubilee, be bold enough, and realize you may get some pushback from some of his followers. They are strangely devout and tend not to see anything that he has done. They're in denial that he was involved with cutting the PFD, as an example. But Jubilee is someone we can count on. It's very important, because we don't know how some of these Anchorage races are going to go. It looks like we're going to pick up a seat in Southeast. Dan Ortez isn't running, but we're going to get Jeremy Bynum in there. But some of these other races we could lose. And so now all of a sudden, Wasilla is a very important race, and we need Jubilee Underwood in that seat, District 27.
All right, Shelley Hughes, thanks for coming on board and joining us. As always, good to talk with you folks. Tomorrow is Firearms Friday. Chris Chang, Top Shot champion, Willie Waffle, and more. Your phone calls. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day. All right, Shelley. Final bite at the apple here for this. If there's anything we missed or anything we should have hit on in your mind, now's the time to do it, and we'll let you get on out of here.
I think we covered the main points. There's just a toxicity that is surrounding David, unfortunately, and I think he could be really helpful to the conservative cause in a different way. He just, some people are really great at some things, and some people aren't great at some things. And he needs to find a fit where he can actually be helpful. This isn't it. This is not it. We need someone who will step up and do the right thing And I'd love to have a MATSU delegation that can work together well. I will give another example. All the pro-life legislators signed a letter that I did. David refused to sign it. And so, yet he is out there touting himself as the most conservative, and the rest of us get attacked on that matter. So yeah, I just think we can do better. And Wasilla voters need to know the truth. They need to know what is really going on, not just what he says, not just the rhetoric, it's the actions, right? It's not just the talk, it's the walk.
Yeah, no, I agree. And again, some of his followers I've been threatened. I know that other people have been threatened with everything from bodily harm to dismemberment by one member in particular is who I'm thinking about. And again, he still refuses to distance himself from these people. And I think that's, again, problematic. The company.
Hey, I don't know if you have to cut this off, but there's one other point, because I know Article 5, constitutional convention, I've been on the forefront of that. And Eastman is a John Bircher, and John Birchers, they've done a lot of things over the decades, but the one thing they are right now, their main mission is to stop a federal constitutional convention and to stop state constitutional convention. If you remember, we had no budget when that question was on the ballot in 2022. And so it was a very grassroots, up against a mammoth amount of money being spent to tell people to vote no. And we were working hard and doing whatever we could, coming on and trying to get the word out why, a constitutional convention is not going to upend everything. There have been 230 state constitutional conventions held since our nation's founding, even during tumultuous times, and it didn't create chaos. They were held very civilly. Nothing super extreme got through. It was a good process. But David came on, wrote an article, and came basically against the state constitutional convention shortly before the vote. And I thought that was really odd. But now that I've seen the scorecard that the John Birchers have put out, giving him 100% and essentially failing the rest of us, or giving us D's and F's or whatever they were, it makes sense. And he got 100%. And I'll have to say, Michael, how teachers will sometimes grade on the curve. In this instance, the teacher not only graded on the curve, but picked their teacher's pet, which was David, and made that the 100%. And then everybody fell below. But David and Linda Boyle have also done a scorecard, and much more fair. And guess where David Eastman is on their list of legislators? He's bottom last. He came in last place. And David and Linda Boyle are good conservatives. So very, very interesting. And voters just need to know. I don't put a lot of stock in these scorecards anyway, because it doesn't take into account things that maybe a person might not know. And sometimes they'll score something because a bill has one good thing in it, but then it's got really bad things in it too, but they'll still score it high. So I don't put a lot of stock in that, but to me, that was fascinating to realize that that connection with the anti-constitutional conventions with David.
All right. Well, Shelley Hughes, thank you so much for coming on board. As always, it's good to talk with you. We'll have to do this again here as we get past the elections. Thank you for coming on board and sharing the information with us. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you, Michael, very much for having me. And everybody have a great day, including you, Michael.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right, folks. Well, that does it for me. We're done for today. Hopefully you got some good information. I mean, it's, decision making is easy once you have all the facts, and we need to get all the facts out there. So hopefully we'll see what happens with this. It'll be interesting to see. Tomorrow, again, Firearms Friday. We're looking forward to that, as always. We will see you guys tomorrow. Be kind, love one another, live well. We'll see you then. Have a good day.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.